Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our Facebook Live discussion with representatives from FEMA and the SBA. It's been 47 days since Hurricane Harvey made landfall, doing devastating damage to the state of Texas, 250 miles from Corpus Christi all the way to Louisiana. A lot of Texans are hurting, and yet we saw incredible heroism as Texans stepped forward, saving Texans, saving people's lives. And now we're rebuilding. We're rebuilding all across the Gulf Coast. We're making remarkable progress. I have today two representatives from FEMA and SBA to discuss specifics of rebuilding, of disaster recovery, of the programs that are available to help you rebuild and repair storm damage. I also want to mention that we've seen two significant pieces of legislation passed through Congress directed directly at Texas to provide relief from this storm. The first was a couple of weeks ago. Congress passed the first emergency disaster relief bill directed at Texas. And that, it came out of the House of Representatives at $7.5 billion. I joined with my colleague John Cornyn in the Senate to double that to $15.25 billion, and the President signed that into law. And so that money became immediately available for the citizens of Texas all along the Gulf Coast, along with others in hurricane-affected regions. Nobody thinks $15.25 billion is going to be enough to rebuild from this storm, but that was intended to be an initial down payment, an emergency infusion of cash to get help on the ground now. The second piece of legislation that just passed directed at Texas was emergency tax relief legislation that I introduced along with John Cornyn and also Marco Rubio. The three of us together introduced legislation that does a number of things. Number one, if you suffered property casualty losses, if you suffered damage to your home, you can deduct that on your taxes without being subject to the ordinary limitations on making those deductions. So that's immediate relief in terms of tax relief for everybody who suffered disaster harm. That's in Texas and Louisiana from Harvey. That's also in Florida and Georgia from Irma. And it's also in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands from Maria. It applies to everyone in a disaster area who suffered storm damage. Secondly, if you suffered storm damage, you can also withdraw from your retirement funds, your IRA or your 401k. You can withdraw money to rebuild without having to pay the ordinary 10% penalty for an early withdrawal. So that lets you access your savings to help rebuild. Third, the legislation encourages charitable giving all over the country to disaster relief efforts. And it provides that from now to the end of the year, anyone that gives to disaster relief, hurricane relief charities in the affected areas can do so without being subject to the ordinary limitations on charitable giving, either for individuals or for corporations. And the fourth element of this tax relief legislation is addressed to the many employers who kept paying their employees through the storm and after the storm, even though their employees couldn't come in. They may not have been able to come into work. The business may have been shut down because of the storm, and yet a great many employers kept those paychecks coming. This tax relief legislation provides a tax credit to employers that continue to pay their employees. Now, the Cruz, Cornyn, Rubio legislation passed both houses of Congress just over a week ago, and a week ago Friday, President Trump signed it into law. So that's emergency tax relief available to Texans all along the Gulf Coast, passed into law, and that's one of the many resources that we have to come through this. Now I want to shift to the part talking with the experts from FEMA. We have two folks with us. We have Colonel Albie Lewis from FEMA, and we have Michael Flores from the SBA. Gentlemen, please come in. Welcome.
Sure. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Let me just start by asking both of you, can you give us an update on the ground of what FEMA and SBA are doing here in Texas in response to Harvey?
I'd be happy to do that, sir. First and foremost, you may not realize that already there are over 850,000 applicants for assistance with FEMA alone. So far to date, FEMA has provided those individuals over $1.1 billion in assistance. Furthermore, the National Flood Insurance Program has provided $1.5 billion in assistance. That does not include the assistance that comes in from other federal agencies, such as SBA, as well as the money that's coming in from FEMA to assist municipalities in their recovery efforts.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, from the SBA side, yeah, this has been a tremendous disaster, as we all know. From the SBA side, we provided over $1 billion in low-interest loans, and that's a tremendous amount. Things are moving in the right direction, and that's what this is about people, businesses, families recovering. So we're continuing to move forward and press in, but we need everyone's assistance in helping us get there.
So let's ask a practical question. I say I'm living as a resident on the Gulf Coast, and my home was damaged by Harvey. What should I have done now to get help?
The first and foremost thing that everyone needs to do is to register with FEMA for assistance. That number is 1-800-621-FEMA. They can also go online to www.disasterassistance.gov. The process starts there. I can't overemphasize that. That's where it starts.
So it's disasterassistance.gov, disasterassistance.gov, and give us that phone number again.
1-800-621-FEMA.
Okay, so if I've gone online and I've made a claim, I filed, what next? What should I expect to happen next?
Well, there's a number of things that will happen. If you're a homeowner, they will reach out to you, FEMA will reach out to you and set up an appointment for an inspector to come to your home and inspect your home for what the damages are so that we can get you into the reimbursement or into the process of receiving some assistance.
Now, are there any deadlines coming up that the Texans need to know about?
Yes, sir, there are. First and foremost, on the 24th of this month is the individual assistance deadline. On the 31st of this month is a public assistance deadline. So those are two critical deadlines.
So tell us, what is individual assistance and what is public assistance?
Individual assistance are those dollars that we provide to individuals, usually the head of household. So they apply through that 1-800-621-FEMA, and the dollars that are provided to support that family are individual assistance dollars. Public assistance are those dollars that help the municipality recover, such things as schools, roads, municipal buildings, fire departments, police departments. All of those type of things are public assistance dollars.
So for public assistance, we're looking at mayors and county judges and our local government leaders that have to put in for public assistance to repair those public facilities.
That's correct, primarily. However, I know that Texas, like my home state, we have many of the small fire departments that are volunteer. And those volunteer departments, many of them are private nonprofits. They may also be eligible for assistance, so they must submit their application for assistance.
And the deadline for public assistance again is?
31 October, sir.
October 31. All right. Individual assistance. That deadline is?
That's 24 October, sir.
October 24th. Now, individual assistance, this week I've been down in Rockport, been down in Refugio, was in Beaumont yesterday helping demo a house there. Mm-hmm. We're seeing Texans come back. I'll tell you, I also visited with some folks who said that they had applied and been denied, and that they didn't know why, but they were frustrated and confused. What would you say to someone who's gone online, filled it out, and gotten a denial and doesn't understand why because they're looking at flooding in their house or holes in the roof?
Yeah, let me first say that if you get a denial letter, please read it in its entirety. A denial doesn't necessarily mean that you're denied forever. It may mean that a simple information piece is missing from your application. It could be a social security number is missing on the application, or the wrong address of your residence is entered into the system. So it's a very simple process. Go back, get back into disasterassistance.gov, or go to a disaster recovery center and update that information so that can be corrected.
So if you've been denied and you've suffered storm damage, you've got damage to your home, you're hurting and need help, apply again. Look carefully at why you were denied. You can go back online and see if some information is missing, or you can go to a disaster recovery center. Now, how do you find a disaster recovery center to actually talk with someone in person?
Work with your local officials. Reach out to your local emergency manager. They know where the disaster recovery centers are. They know where those bus routes to many of them are, and can get you there so that you can get in there and get updates on your process.
And Albie, for folks that are still waiting on home inspections, what do you recommend they do in the meantime, and when should they expect an inspection?
Well, home inspections are somewhat of a moving target, and let me explain that. As I said earlier, there's roughly 850,000 head of households who have registered. However, those registrations are continuing every day. Inspections then are scheduled based on that registration. We have already conducted roughly 88% of the home inspections for those that have registered for FEMA assistance. So in many cases, I understand some of those folks have registered, and when they registered, they said that their house was inaccessible. If that's the case, and they haven't had a home inspection yet, they need to call the 1-800 number again and make sure that you get rescheduled for the home inspection.
Now, how about debris removal? Where are we in that process? That obviously is a monumental task and an important task. In terms of seeing a ray of sunshine after the storm, it makes a big difference when you don't have 10, 12 feet of debris sitting out front of your house. Where are we on that, and what do we expect the timing for completion?
Understood. Debris is always a huge issue in any disaster. And remember, for Texas, this was a catastrophic disaster. I've heard estimates, total estimates, just for the county alone, close to 15 million cubic yards of debris. That amount alone takes a Herculean effort in order to get contractors in here to move that amount of debris. I am happy to report that a lot of the first passes have been conducted by both the county and the city for that pickup. Millions of cubic yards of debris have already been picked up, but it doesn't stop there. What happens is it's multiple passes. In many cases, homeowners come back to their homes later after the first pass, and they're just starting to get that debris out. Furthermore, let's put into context how much a cubic yard is. If you look at a washing machine, think of that as a cubic yard, and then you multiply that by 15 million.
Wow.
That's a significant amount of debris that's got to be moved. But again, I'm happy to report that FEMA has already provided many of the municipalities upfront money to assist with that debris removal.
Well, that's a lot of washing machines.
It is certainly.
Michael, tell us about SBA. What resources are available through SBA?
Sure. SBA, we provide low-interest disaster loans. So what happens is, if it's a need that's above what FEMA can provide, then that's when we come in. We do those larger dollar amounts. As an example, you spoke of a homeowner who may have lost everything. Well, we provide up to $200,000 in the form of a low-interest loan, $40,000 for contents, and for businesses up to $2 million. So we understand that people are still in the moment when they come out and there's debris. They're still in the moment, but we encourage them to lean in, to take a look at the resources that are going to be available. This is going to be a patchwork of programs to help people to recover, but together we'll get through this.
So how much has SBA loaned already into Texas to help with Harvey relief?
Yeah, as of this morning, we've approved over $1 billion in low-interest loans. So we're moving in the right direction, absolutely.
Now, when you say low-interest loans, what sort of interest rates are we talking about?
You know, as a typical, for a homeowner, we're looking at as low as 1.75%. Again, that's 1.75% on a loan that's up to 30 years.
What about for a small business?
For a small business, we're looking at 3.3%. And again, that's up to 30 years. So it's fantastic rates, and we hope to do a lot of good and help a lot of people.
Now, is that limited? Let's say I have a small business. I met an electrician in Northwest Houston, for example, who had an electronics store. Rather, he sold and repaired electronics, and he had about 2 feet of water in his store. And he was standing. When I was there, the water was still in the store. It was right in the aftermath of the storm. What resources are available to him if to rebuild and get that store up and running again?
Yeah, first my heart goes out to him for his loss. But what happens there is we'll send a loss verifier out in many cases to assess the damage. We'll base the loan on that damage amount. And then from there we can begin setting up times to dole out those monies to him to help him to recover. Another thing that's important is we have a loan that's called economic injury. What that is if a road is washed out and people can't frequent a business, we can inject them with a working capital loan to keep them afloat. So that's very important for people to know.
Now, what about smaller amounts? So I was at several weeks ago at the NRG Center, which is one of the shelters set up here in Houston, and I met two different individuals who were both in construction. And both of them had lost all their tools, and they're required to show up with their own tools on a build site.
Yeah.
Now, I told them the good news is that we're going to need a lot of contractors. Construction is one industry that's going to be busy for a long time here in the Gulf Coast. But they're just saying, as a practical matter, they don't have any tools. Is there assistance they can receive at that level?
Absolutely. You know, what they're going to want to do is first apply. Register with FEMA, apply with the SBA, because the goal is to get them back working, because we have a lot of work to do here in the Texas area. So there is no loan too small, but we have a cap. The cap is $2 million. But we encourage them to apply, get the help you need, and let's get things going in the right direction.
All right, let's shift to a couple of questions from folks out there watching Facebook Live. We've got constituents from Beaumont who've asked, what's the best way to get a status update on their case?
Primarily either calling the 1-800-621 FEMA number or doing the disasterassistance.gov, going online to get that update. A third choice is going to the DRC and working directly with the folks in the DRC to get those updates.
And Michael, let me ask, where, for a small business loan in any of those examples we talked about, where do they go? How does someone who's interested in that, where do they need to go?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. The first is they can go to any disaster recovery center.
Okay.
We're at every disaster recovery center FEMA's at. We're joined at the hip. We also have 5 business recovery centers where they can go in for one-on-one assistance. They can call us. They can call us at 1-800-659-2955, or they can go online to SBA.gov and look for the disaster assistance link.
Okay, so that's SBA.gov if you need a small business loan, SBA.gov, disasterassistance.gov if you need personal assistance. And what's the phone number again for SBA?
Sure, the phone number is 1-800-659-2955. That's for homeowners, renters, businesses, and private nonprofits.
So another question from folks watching the Facebook Live. Lyndon asked the following. I don't live in an immediately affected area anymore, but I'm still a Texan, and I want to know, how can I help?
Yeah, let me answer that this way. Anytime you're recovering from a disaster, it's more than just FEMA. It's more than just SBA. As you saw during the response, it took Texans helping Texans. There was even what I heard, the Cajun Navy coming in to assist her. And the recovery is the same way. It's Texans helping Texans. There's volunteer groups out there. There's other religious groups that are helping. Most of those you can find by going online and finding what agencies are here helping out in which municipality. That's your first stop.
Well, the Red Cross is doing terrific work. The Salvation Army is doing terrific work. As you mentioned, there are a lot of church groups.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time out traveling all up and down the Gulf Coast and helping with recovery efforts, and have encountered people probably from 30 or 40 different states. Just yesterday, we were working on a house in Beaumont, and there were folks from Arizona, folks from Minnesota, folks from Alaska. There was a team from Israel that was there helping clear out and demo homes. It really has been an amazing outpouring. Let me ask finally, what other resources are available to Texans? What should they know about?
Yeah, let me start with the DRC. The DRC, again, is not just SBA and FEMA. Many of the state programs are there. The local programs are there. There's representatives are there, so that you can go in and get information about all the programs that may be out there. Everything from what we call muck and gut, those volunteer agencies that will go in and help empty out the house and get that debris out of the house so the house can dry out. There are agencies even doing that. So those DRCs are a place where you can get that wraparound service for assistance.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for all of the terrific work FEMA and SBA are both doing. Again, those websites are disasterassistance.gov and SBA.gov. And, you know, let me just say, in the face of disaster, we saw Texans come together. We saw strength and unity and love and perseverance. We've seen the spirit of Texas, the best face of Texas. I've never been prouder to be a Texan. than during and after this storm. And so to everyone who's hurting, I just want to encourage you. We're standing together. Know that if you've lost your home, if you face flooding, you're not alone. Millions of Texans, millions of Americans are lifting you up in prayer. We are standing together. We're standing united. Republicans, Democrats, everyone united as one, as Texans. We're going to make it through this, and we're going to come out even stronger. Thank you. God bless you.